Wherever you go, you can take BBC News with you. Just text NEWS to 81010 to access the latest stories from the BBC News website on your mobile phone, or go to bbc.co.uk/news. BBC News, whenever you need to know.
Join me, Terry Wogan, in London's Hyde Park on Saturday the 9th of September with guests including Lionel Richie, Ankela Georgiou, Alison Balsam and the BBC Concert Orchestra for BBC Proms in the Park.
How a vulnerable teenager was failed by the system that was supposed to protect her. A Real Story special tells Becky's story at 10:35 here on BBC One.
This is BBC One in the East Midlands. Now the news with Hugh Edwards and Colin Hazelden.
On the first anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, Americans observe a day of remembrance. Katrina claimed over 1,600 lives, many thousands were made homeless. 12 months on, the President admits that the initial response was too slow.
I take full responsibility for the federal government's response. And a year ago I made a pledge that we'll learn the lessons of Katrina and that we will do what it takes to help you recover.
We'll be reporting from New Orleans on how things have changed in the past year. Also tonight, a P&O ferry is examined by police investigating the deaths of 3 yachtsmen. Claims that elderly patients face malnutrition because nurses are too busy to help with feeding. A mother appeals for the safe return of her daughter, who's thought to have been abducted by her father.
We're absolutely devastated by the events of the last few days, and we're finding it really difficult to come to terms with what's happened.
And how advice on stopping all the junk mail has landed one postman in trouble.
Here in the East Midlands, the preventable death of Wendy Smith. A hospital admits it was negligent in failing to treat her. And the controversial new asylum seeker centre opening in just a few days.
Good evening. On the first anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, President Bush has admitted failings in the way his administration responded to the disaster. Speaking in New Orleans this evening, where he led a day of remembrance, he promised that government would be better prepared in future. Well, 12 months ago, this was New Orleans after Katrina struck, making many thousands homeless. And this is the city today, in recovery, says President Bush, but making slow progress, say locals. Well, much of the mess has been cleared up and the damage is estimated at $100 billion. Mr. Bush has already pledged $110 billion of aid, but so far only $44 billion has been spent. There were 455,000 people living in New Orleans when Katrina struck, but more than half of those have yet to return. And Katrina, as we've heard, claimed more than 1,600 lives, and one of the legacies has been a trebling of the city's suicide rate. Our special correspondent Gavin Hewitt, who reported from New Orleans a year ago, is back in the city 12 months on.
Hugh, welcome to Lakeview, one of the better areas in the city where houses used to cost $200,000. But if you look over here, you'll see that many of the houses are still in ruins. And in fact, in some of the houses, you can still see some of the possessions. They haven't yet even been cleaned out. And in this neighborhood of 30 to 40 houses, not a single person has yet moved back in. New Orleans is very much still a city in need of recovery. A lone trumpeter led a procession today from the city's lower 9th Ward, one of the areas most devastated by last year's storm. They passed a canal whose walls had broken, flooding the city. Some of the marchers threw flowers into the water. The mayor of New Orleans rang a bell at precisely the time when the levees broke and ruined his city.
There's never been a disaster like this in the history of this country. And we are hopeful that there will never be a disaster like this ever again.
President Bush returned to mark the Day of Remembrance. It was a turning point for his presidency. Many here blamed him for the government's slow response to the flooding of the city. The president today promised there would be a better response next time. He acknowledged that failures continue. People hear about help, he said, and wonder where it is.
I take full responsibility for the federal government's response. And a year ago I made a pledge that we will learn the lessons of Katrina and that we will do what it takes to help you recover.
Last year we bought a boat and headed into the city's flooded neighborhoods. Bodies were floating uncollected. In one house we found a family of 5 children. Their mother was dead in the back bedroom. We helped the family to safety. Government help simply was inadequate and arrived too late. This is the same neighborhood where we found the 5 children last year, but nobody knows what's happened to them. And that is a familiar story because so many people were dispersed to different parts of the United States and haven't yet returned here to New Orleans. And that is the story in many parts of the city, empty spaces where people either can't come back or have given up to start new lives elsewhere. If on his way into the city President Bush had stopped at the porch of Lynn Clement, this is what she would have told him.
It's very devastating. The neighbors haven't returned. There's no water. There's no sewer services. There's no electricity. It's just total devastation. I don't see this community coming back for a very, very long time, and I don't know if it would happen in my lifetime.
Some neighborhoods may not be rebuilt. They're areas vulnerable to flooding, but they just happen to be black neighborhoods, and people are angry. A once majority black city could become majority white, and the mayor is having to promise every area will be restored.
We plan to rebuild the lower 9th Ward. We plan to rebuild the upper 9th Ward. We plan to build every section of this city. And I don't care who don't like it.
As the light fades, military police appear on the streets. Crime has returned. Suicide rates have trebled. Relationships fractured. All the scars from a year of trying to reclaim normal lives.
Well, Gavin, you were there a year ago. You've seen the difference now this year. We've heard some people today saying they don't think the city will ever properly recover. How do you assess things?
Hugh, in some senses, I'm shocked by how little progress has been made. I mean, this street, with nobody living in it, is not untypical. The main reasons, bureaucracy, red tape, and lack of funding. And yet, there is significant rebuilding taking place. I met a man yesterday in a neighborhood who had almost completely restored his house and hoped to act as a kind of magnet to bring other people in. But my best guess is that this place will take at least 5 years to recover its vibrancy. And one thing almost everybody says, if within that 5 years there was another serious hurricane that did real damage, then I think quite a lot of people who are struggling to come back here would lose some of their faith in this city. Hugh.
Gavin in New Orleans, thank you very much. Detectives investigating the deaths of 3 yachtsmen off the Isle of Wight have tonight been examining the P&O ferry, the Pride of Bilbao, which docked in Portsmouth this evening. Investigators are exploring one theory that the men's yacht may have been involved in a collision. It was reported missing 9 days ago. Well, let's join Tom Simons in Portsmouth tonight. Tom.
Yes, Hugh, the Pride of Bilbao departed from here just a few minutes ago. But before it left, police subjected it to the closest of scrutiny, trying to find out if it was in some way responsible for the loss of a 27-foot sailing boat. If the Ouzo came this close, it could well have been in danger. The investigators have measured and photographed the marks around the ship's waterline. They'll talk to the crew and examine documents. But they can't look at the sailing boat itself. It hasn't been seen for more than a week. The Ouzo left Bembridge on the Isle of Wight 9 days ago, headed for Dartmouth. It could have gone either way around the island. The Pride of Bilbao left a few hours later, headed south. So how close did it come? The BBC's been told investigators have tracked the ferry's course and believe it may have been involved in a near miss with the yacht. A close encounter could have swamped the sailing boat or pushed it off course. At the Solent Coast Guard, there was no report of a sinking until a fisherman spotted something in the water near a lighthouse.
The first that the team at Solent Coast Guard knew about the incident was the discovery of a body. about 10 miles south of the NAB Tower. Now clearly whatever happened was sudden and catastrophic, because we know that the vessel was equipped with both digital selective calling and VHF radio on board.
The three men lost in the tragedy were Jason Downer here on the left, Rupert Saunders and James Meeby on the right. Their families say they were experienced yachtsmen and they loved their sport. The hope is that their mysterious deaths in these busy waters will be explained and that the lessons learnt will save other lives. Now, the police are insisting tonight they're keeping an open mind about this incident. They are, for example, gathering information and data from other ships, larger ships, that were also in the area at the time. As for P&O, well, it released a statement saying it intended to cooperate fully with the police investigation. Hugh.
Tom Simons, thank you very much. The Healthcare Commission, the official body which monitors the NHS, has told the BBC it will look more closely at the care of the elderly in hospitals and in particular at the provision of food. The leading charity has alleged that malnutrition among elderly patients is rising because nurses are apparently too busy to help with feeding. Well, our health correspondent, Branwen Jeffries, is here with me and she has more details.
Hugh, this is an issue of huge concern. Many patients are elderly. They need extra care, but risk becoming malnourished while they're in hospital. We've had a huge response from you today on this issue. Many people have contacted the BBC website with their own experiences and those of their elderly relatives. The nurses were just too busy to help, wrote one. The food was just left there, said another. And one family told us, we took in food and fed him ourselves. But many families feel it's the hospital staff who should be providing this care.
Ruth Dan visited her father often in hospital before his death. She was shocked at how little care was taken to treat him with dignity. He was 87, ill and disabled by age. He was barely able to feed himself.
On several occasions when I visited, his food was just left on the tray by the side of the bed. And obviously being blind, he wouldn't have known it was there. And also, quite often when I visited, his hearing aids were in tin, so even if somebody had told him it was there, he wouldn't have known. Dad was lucky because we've got a very big family and he had visitors every day. I mean, my concerns are for people that have nobody to visit them, who's feeding them?
Sadly, Ruth's experience is far from unusual. 60% of elderly patients are at risk of malnutrition. Feeding patients properly is essential for recovery. Early this year, hospitals were given national guidelines to make sure it happens. They should weigh every patient on arrival in hospital, use a system like these red trays to identify vulnerable patients, and make sure staff are properly trained about the importance of nutrition. The financial cost to the NHS of malnutrition is £7.3 billion. Tonight, the hospital's watchdog is warning they can't ignore the human cost either.
We're looking at it in our assessment of the standards that hospitals meet, and we'll be publishing the results of that in October this year. And then we're going to look in more depth because we take this so seriously. Hospitals have to get this right.
Well, the government admitted today that malnutrition still is a problem in some hospitals. It says the guidelines issued earlier this year will raise standards, and the best hospitals are already showing that common sense measures can really make a difference. Hugh.
Bradman, thank you very much. Now, Scotland Yard says that another 3 men have been charged this evening in connection with the alleged plot to blow up transatlantic airliners. It brings the total to 15. Mohammed Yassar Gulzar, Mohammed Shamin Uddin and Nabil Hussain are accused of conspiracy to murder and preparing acts of terrorism, and they'll appear in court tomorrow. 5 other people are still being questioned by detectives. The mother of a 12-year-old girl who's thought to have been abducted by her father has appealed for her safe return. Louise Campbell's daughter, Molly, who lived with her in Stornoway in the Western Isles, is believed to have flown to Pakistan. Her family fear that she could be forced to become a child bride, as our Scotland correspondent, Andrew Castle, reports.
Louise Campbell was clearly distraught as she arrived to make an emotional appeal for the safe return of her daughter. 12-year-old Molly disappeared on Friday. She's now believed to be with her mother's estranged husband, who's of Pakistani origin. Mrs. Campbell said she was devastated by Molly's absence, which had come out of the blue.
We miss her so much. And we beg her to come back home. And I need her to know that she's not in any trouble.
Molly was last seen in the grounds of her school in Stornoway on Friday morning, but then with her elder sister took a flight to Glasgow, where she met her father and flew on to Pakistan. Louise Campbell and her daughter used to live here in the Pollokshields district of Glasgow before moving to the southwest of Scotland and then to the Western Isles because Mrs. Campbell thought it was safer. But the father secretly travelled to Stornoway and met Molly the day before her disappearance. The police say they're treating the case as one of abduction. British charities say such incidents are a growing problem in the UK.
Unfortunately, it is a growing problem, and last year alone we dealt with over 300 new cases involving over 400 children, and they were the cases that were reported to our charity alone.
Officers investigating the case, however, won't say whether they believe the girl is being forced into marriage in Pakistan.
Molly is a 12-year-old child, and we're concerned for her well-being, that's for sure. In terms of any intended marriage, then I'm not prepared to speculate on that, and I would say that is speculation at this time.
Louise Campbell, meanwhile, is hoping Interpol will trace her daughter and return her to the UK. Andrew Castle, BBC News.
They're coming up on tonight's programme. Why football's fiercest competitor is ready to learn from his mistakes now that he's a manager. Patients suffering from incurable diseases have been paying thousands of pounds for unproven stem cell treatments, according to an investigation by the BBC's Newsnight programme. It discovered that the man helping to organise the treatment is already wanted by the FBI in the United States for selling false and misleading stem cell treatments, as Susan Watts reports now.
Sue Mills is full of hope. She's been to Holland to get help for her multiple sclerosis. It's taken months to arrange and cost thousands of pounds. The company behind her treatment, called Advanced Cell Therapeutics, or ACT, has generated plenty of media interest, with talk of remarkable recoveries. But they've published no research and undertaken no clinical trials, and until now, numerous questions have remained unanswered. Who runs ACT? Where do the stem cells they use come from? Do they work? And crucially, are they safe? The moment has come for Sue to have her treatment. The stem cells go in just under her skin, at the back of her neck and towards the base of her spine. But the number of cells in the injections is very small.
There is no convincing evidence that stem cells from cord blood, which are for the most part blood stem cells, have any therapeutic value in multiple sclerosis.
Sybil and her 2-year-old son Ethan have come all the way from Australia for his stem cell injection. Ethan had meningitis. Now he can't walk and feeds through a tube. His mother raised the cost of their flights and £13,000 treatment through charity events. The nurse showed our cameraman the vial of ACT stem cells for Ethan's injection. All cells. Who are they? Back in the UK, we looked at All Cells' website, and this phrase jumped out at us. Its products are not for clinical use in humans. We checked with the company, and they were shocked that their cells were being injected into people. Hello, is this Mr. Van Rooyen? I spoke on the phone to Stephen Van Rooyen, who's in South Africa, where ACT is based. Tonight, lawyers acting for both him and the company issued the following statement.
ACT considers that it is not engaged in any legal or ethical wrongdoing and has received legal advice endorsing this position. The cells supplied to ACT are exclusively human umbilical cord stem cells. They are certainly not animal cells, nor are they designated solely for animal studies.
We've now told all the characters involved about our findings.
I was quite worried to find out that they weren't for human use. I don't know what use they would be for, and it's quite worrying to think that they've been injected into me. I don't know what the future holds now.
Sue Mills and others who've undergone stem cell therapy may yet be proved to be pioneers in new techniques. But in the absence of significant proof, there'll continue to be concerns that they've been exploited. Susan Watts, BBC News.
You can see the full investigation by Susan Watts on Newsnight. That's on BBC Two, of course, at 10:30. An American company, AEG, will present its bid tomorrow to run Britain's first super casino in the Millennium Dome. But on the eve of a public hearing, the company has had to apologise to local religious leaders for misrepresenting their views on gambling in some official documents. Luisa Baldini reports.
The Millennium Dome was once regarded as Britain's biggest political white elephant. Now plans for it to host the country's first super casino are encountering just as much controversy. Anschutz Entertainment Group, or AEG, which is redeveloping the site, sent documents to the government claiming to summarise the views of a multi-faith group broadly in favour of a casino. In reality, local Christians, Muslims and Sikhs don't agree with the plan.
It imperfectly represented our views. It was selective. Our own paper discusses in detail different faiths' views on gambling, which are very different.
What the Greenwich Peninsula Chaplaincy had written was, the faiths all recognise that gambling can prevent human flourishing and that it should therefore be avoided. How it appeared on the Department of Culture website via AEG was that while some of their constituent faiths consider gambling to be incompatible with their faith, they recognise the right of people to gamble in a free country.
The Casino Advisory Panel wants us to focus very much on location, not on the fundamental arguments for and against gambling. That's what we did, but in doing that we probably over-biased it towards what they were asking for and didn't provide enough context in terms of what the various religious groups felt.
It's the latest episode prompting questions about the integrity of the Anschutz bid. It follows Deputy Prime Minister John Prescott's stay at Philip Anschutz's luxury Colorado ranch. Mr Prescott failed to declare the visit to Parliament. Scotland Yard is now investigating whether he's breached anti-corruption laws. But it's the timing of today's controversy with religious leaders in Greenwich that could be detrimental to the American bid. This latest row has erupted just a day before AEG's application to transform the dome here below me into a super casino is the subject of a public hearing, the first in a series of meetings that will help determine which location in Britain is best suited. An independent panel is expected to complete the evaluation of proposals by the end of the summer and make its final decision by the end of the year. Luisa Baldini, BBC News.
A postman who showed people how to stop junk mail being delivered to their homes has been suspended by Royal Mail. Roger Annis wrote and handed out a leaflet to households in his local area in Barry in South Wales, telling people how to avoid receiving unsolicited mail. Royal Mail says that he's being investigated for alleged misconduct. Our business reporter Richard Scott is with me now. I think it's fair to say this has provoked quite a debate, Richard, and the size of the problem is pretty big.
It's a huge industry and it makes Royal Mail an awful lot of money. The typical household in the UK is likely to get about 750 pieces of junk mail a year. Now that includes flyers from the local pizza company, tempting new credit card offers, that sort of thing, as well as those letters which say "to the occupier" on them. And it's those unaddressed pieces of junk mail which are really the focus of today's story. Last year Royal Mail delivered more than 3 billion of those to our homes, and when you consider that a company might spend more than 4 pence or so on each of those, Royal Mail could easily have made £150 million in revenue just from that. And then, of course, it's got the stamped junk mail on top, so it's big business.
So to those people watching and wondering how on earth they stop it, is there a way?
There is a way. A few people don't want to get rid of it. They like opening all this mail, but if you do want to stop it, the best thing to do, first of all, is to register with the Mail Preference Service. That will stop you getting the vast majority of addressed junk mail, things like the credit card offers. Then after that, you need to write to Royal Mail and tell them you want to opt out of the unaddressed junk mail. And we've got details of how you can do both of those on the BBC News website. Now, once you've done that, you need then to make sure that any companies and charities you've had dealings with, they've also got you opted out of their mailings. And then if you really want to stop it, tell the local pizza company that you don't want theirs and the local newspaper. But it's important to remember that actually there's so much junk mail, it actually helps the whole system become much more efficient. If none of us got any junk mail at all, you and me would have to pay more for our letters.
Well, there's a thought. Thank you very much, Richard. The former Manchester United captain Roy Keane has been talking about the challenges ahead in his new job as manager of Sunderland. Keane, who was well known for his volatile temperament as a player, said that he would accept nothing less than maximum commitment from every single member of the team, as James Munro reports now.
On the pitch, one look from Roy Keane was enough to strike fear into opponents and teammates alike. Win at all costs was his motto. Now the football boots have been replaced by a manager's suit and a promise to tone down his behaviour.
I'm aware I can't be maybe as, gone off the handle as much as I did as a player. But again, if I feel something's not right and it's affecting the football club, then I look to nail it. But hopefully a bit more subtly.
More subtle than the deliberate lunge on Alf-Inge Haaland, which wrecked the Manchester City player's career, or the row with Ireland coach Mick McCarthy, after which Keane walked out on his teammates in the 2002 World Cup finals. Keane also fell out with Sir Alex Ferguson and criticised his Manchester United teammates for not trying hard enough. Even in a suit, he'll expect total commitment from those around him, but he's prepared to admit he's made mistakes.
I think I have, no doubt, over the years crossed that white line. I think it's probably cost me a lot. It's probably cost me the World Cup in 2002. You could say my United career, but as much as that sometimes is a downside to me, I think it's a big plus for me. I do care about the game. I care about who I'm playing for, who I'm playing with, and over the forthcoming, days, weeks, months, and hopefully years of Sunderland, I will look to get the balance right.
Keane's career has been a story of success, including 12 trophies at Manchester United. He played more than 450 times for his club, 65 times for Ireland. And bringing that success to a struggling championship side, Sunderland, is perhaps his greatest challenge.
As a player, Roy Keane never took a step backwards, but here he is on day one as a manager, admitting he got things wrong. He says he's more experienced, more humble, but the players and the fans will realise soon enough that he's just as competitive. James Munro, BBC News, at the Stadium of Light.
Well, the 10 o'clock news hour continues on BBC News 24 with tomorrow's papers, a business roundup, and in Sports Day at 10:30. The cricket umpire, the centre of that ball tampering row, has issued an apology. And on BBC One, I'll be back with the headlines after you've joined our news teams where you are. Bye for now.
Good evening. An NHS trust has admitted it was negligent in the way it treated a woman who died in its care. Wendy Smith died at Newark General Hospital after falling into a diabetic coma. She went 22 hours without the treatment which could have saved her. Jeff Maskell reports.
Wendy Smith was a healthy 42-year-old managing her diabetes with insulin. She was admitted to Newark General Hospital in January 2002 and examined by a locum doctor, but no detailed tests were carried out.
The junior doctors at that hospital failed to treat her with insulin and failed to rehydrate her, and unfortunately that led to the tragic circumstances of her untimely death. I think for the period that she was left in hospital with no proper treatment, it certainly is one of the worst that I've seen.
For her family, it's the end of the legal battle, but not the end of their questions.
It's very distressing, especially when you actually read the paperwork and you see in black and white what Newark Hospital did not do. Nothing can bring Wendy back, but we want to prevent this happening to anybody else, because what we've been through as a family, you wouldn't wish that on anybody.
The Trust has reached an out-of-court settlement with the Smith family. In a statement today, they expressed their deep regret at Wendy Smith's death. They said that valuable lessons had been learnt as a result, especially with the use of locum staff. They say that senior consultants are now permanently employed here at the Newark General Hospital. Jeff Maskell, East Midlands Today, Newark.
The police are investigating the suspicious death of a man who may have been stabbed. The man was found badly injured outside a house at Fair Road in Glenfield near Leicester just before midnight on Saturday. He later died in hospital. The man's not been formally identified. A man's been charged with drink driving after a car crashed and ended up in a river. It happened on Sunday night at Hermitage Lane in Mansfield. 5 men were taken to Kingsmill Hospital. One suffered serious injuries and is currently in a critical condition. A second man was also seriously hurt but is expected to be released shortly. The 3 other men had minor injuries. Lee Ayres, who's 25 and from Chesterfield, will appear in court next month. East Midlands Today has learnt that the first of thousands of asylum seekers will begin arriving at a controversial immigration centre next week. They'll visit Loughborough from across the East Midlands to register with the Home Office. Here's our social affairs correspondent, Jeremy Ball.
Yes, this disused job centre is about to become a focal point for the asylum system right across the East Midlands. Eventually up to 500 people will be coming to register here every single day. It's designed to help the Home Office keep tabs on asylum seekers and to make the system work more effectively. But in Loughborough there's been vocal opposition from traders and from people who live in the town. Some are worried that the centre could lead to an increase in crime.
Well, it's got to be somewhere. It's just bad luck it's in Loughborough.
I don't think there's anybody happy about it.
Here are two of the people they're worried about, but Adrian and Patrick are worried too. They're failed asylum seekers who are living in Nottingham while their claims are being reviewed.
Look, this map here, I cannot see any signs.
Adrian's been told to turn up next week. He's already been held in a detention centre, and they're both frightened that if they go to Loughborough, they won't come home.
I've got a bad experience about sign to report to the centre. First of all, it's not a good place. It's like a prison.
Of course I'm worried. What are you worried about? I'm worried because I will be arrested again.
They don't have any money to pay the transport. How they will travel to go to Loughborough is definitely impossible.
But the Home Office is convinced that the new unit here can help sort out problems in the asylum system. They say there's absolutely no evidence that centres like this do cause more crime, and they're working closely with the police and the local council to allay the fears of people who live here. Jeremy Ball, East Midlands Today, Loughborough.
The parents of a 6-month-old boy are criticising the NHS for failing to recognise flathead syndrome as a serious problem. The condition means the back part of Max Dunn's head is virtually flat. Well, faced with a 3-month wait even to see an NHS paediatrician, the family from Nottinghamshire are paying for the cosmetic treatment.
The Dunns from Hucknall travelled to Surrey for private cosmetic treatment they believe they wouldn't get on the NHS.
At the back of his head it's very flat and it comes to like a squared shape at the sides at the top, whereas on most babies it's more rounded.
Birth can affect head shape and often corrects in days. Max's position in the womb is thought to have distorted his skull.
For a normal head shape we want this to be slightly more rounded, and you can see again that the actual width of the head is about the same as the length of the head. So we want the whole head shape to be slightly longer. For Max, we do need to reduce this to bring it into a more normal range.
To alter it, he'll wear this helmet 22 hours a day for about 6 months.
If it was his teeth that needed straightening, you put a brace on him, and I don't see any different for doing something for his head. When he's sitting in his pram, you don't notice it, but when he's out and about, you tend to notice it more.
Back home in Hucknall, Max doesn't seem to mind wearing the helmet. Is it working?
Yes, definitely. You can see an improvement just in the past week. It's absolutely incredible.
Their primary care trust say they're not familiar with the case, but would be happy to meet the family. Rob Sissons, East Midlands Today, Nottinghamshire.
Now then, a quick look at the East Midlands weather with Sarah.
Thank you. Well, the blustery showers that have been with us throughout the evening are gradually starting to die away now overnight. So clearer skies starting to move in and temperatures falling to lows of 9 Celsius. Now, we've always been promising a decent day for Wednesday, and it'll certainly start off fine and dry with some sunshine. It is gradually going to change, though, by the time we get to the afternoon with that cloud thickening. Temperatures reaching highs of 20 Celsius tomorrow, though, so it will feel slightly warmer outside. We can soon start to see that rain moving in towards the evening period, so turning wet to finish off the day.
That's all from the East Midlands Today team. A very good night to you.
Tonight's main news: on the first anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, Americans have been observing a day of remembrance. President Bush has admitted failings in the way his administration responded and promised that government would be better prepared in future. Newsnight starting on BBC Two, but from all of us here on the 10 o'clock team, have a good night.
On The One Show tomorrow, the three sisters who made one baby between them, and the latest on Bill Turnbull and the sleep experiment. That's at 5 to 7 here on BBC One.
Good evening. Well, no sign of the weather settling down. Plenty more rain to come through the rest of this week and indeed the weekend. But for a time at least through tomorrow, it looks quite fine. Certainly a bright, sunny start to the day. And the cows are standing up out there, which is always a good sign, I find. Clear skies across many parts of the UK right now. Make the most of it though, because if I move to one side you can see the next lump of cloud lying in wait, and that'll be heading in later on tomorrow, continuing that very unsettled theme with that more rain to come. But apart from the odd shower, basically it's a clear and dry night out there and will stay that way. And under those clear skies, temperatures falling away quite steadily. It really will be quite a chilly autumnal feeling night. Temperatures in rural spots could get as low as 6 or 7 degrees. More generally in the town centres we're looking at 9, 10, 11 degrees, that sort of thing. So a bright, fresh start tomorrow for most places. And certainly it'll stay dry for the bulk of Scotland throughout the day. The best of the sunshine first up will be across eastern areas. This is 8 o'clock breakfast time, rather more cloud out west, but that cloud's still quite high at this stage. Bit of cloud to the west of the Pennines too, but to the east it'll be bright and sunny, a lot of blue sky out there, and that'll be the case for East Anglia and the southeast, and temperatures steadily recovering after that chilly start. Out west, across the West Country, down towards Devon and Cornwall, a bright enough start to the day. There'll be high cloud pushing in from the west, turning that sunshine a little bit milky, but a fine morning certainly, and that'll be the case for the bulk of Wales too. But for Northern Ireland, any brightness I think will be fairly short-lived, that cloud increasing from the west, and eventually rain will arrive later on in the day. But it'll be a bit of a struggle, I think. Slowly that rain pushing in, but it's going to take all day before damp conditions arrive across Northern Ireland and eventually the west of Wales, the far southwest of England. But for most of the UK it will be dry and bright with some sunshine, especially in the east, and temperatures recovering quite nicely, possibly as high as 22 degrees in London. Generally the high teens. The winds shouldn't be too strong either. Now as we go into tomorrow, so that rain will push ever eastwards across the whole of England and Wales, a damp night here, pushing up into some southwestern parts of Scotland too perhaps. And it's going to become lodged across this central zone of the UK through Thursday, so some rain around here, but on either side some dry weather, if rather cloudy. Further showers to come on Friday. As I hinted at the beginning, more rain to come through the weekend too. More information on our website. That's it. Good night.
Let down by the system that was supposed to protect her. A Real Story special tells Becky's story next on BBC One.
BBC Two continues the incredible journey along the equator with Simon Reeve, now in Asia.
Don't you worry about the floods, just concentrate on the football. Doesn't quite work, does it? You are absolutely incredible.
Equator. Sunday at 8 on BBC Two.
Join me, Terry Wogan, in London's Hyde Park on Saturday the 9th of September with guests including Lionel Richie, Ankela Georgiou, Alison Balsam and the BBC Concert Orchestra for BBC Proms in the Park.
Barry George is convicted of killing Jill Dando.
He was jailed as a result of one of the largest murder investigations in the history of the Metropolitan Police Force. But is he really guilty?
This kind of evidence should not have been used.
Jill Dando's Murder, The New Evidence. A Panorama special, next Tuesday at 9 on BBC One.
A powerful and shocking Real Story special investigation now on BBC One with Fiona Bruce.
Dave is known to the police as a Schedule 1 offender for sex crimes and also for procuring women to get into sex work and prostitution. And, you know, alarm bells are ringing. What would they do in this situation, you know? But it seems that very little's done.
I really like them ones. No, there's ever back.
Dave Grant also has convictions for rape and sexual assault, but the right checks haven't been made yet. Becky is probably in more danger now than ever before. It doesn't take long for her to realise her predicament.
They're all liars. You can't even trust them. Thought you were your mates. Not my mates. Mum's and Keith's mates. It's just like being at home. She's an alky and he's a perv. It's worse than my stepdad. Go to the cops then. There's no point. Tell them about that bastard at home, now they do is let him go. First, they tell me that I'm lying, and then they try sending me on. Have it? I'd so tell that Dave to do one. Can't, can I? Just won't stay there all the time. Been dossing at the Archers. Bex, that's full of druggies and tramps. Safer there than at home. Doesn't your mum go to bear? Like she gives a shit. Don't want me, Trace. I'll kiss my ass.
The charity Bernarda's helps thousands of children who are sexually exploited, but they say the scale of the problem is massively underestimated. They're also concerned that many children, just like Becky, are let down by poor coordination between the different agencies. How common do you think cases like Becky's are?
Every year we are helping 2,000 young people who are being exploited in this way. And that's across the United Kingdom, and that's only in the small pockets where we have enough money to help those young people. So you can imagine the numbers of young people who are at risk of exploitation, who are not getting the help they need.
BBC reporter David Akinsanya knows better than most. He grew up in care and has seen dozens of casualties, girls just like Becky, who ran away from home and became easy targets for abusers. As part of our investigation, David met with dozens of victims. You've been out talking to girls, working girls, on the street. What have you found?
A lot of them get kind of forced into relationships where they're relying on older guys, who I would call paedophiles, who are kind of preying on these young girls, giving them security, giving them somewhere to stay and maybe drugs and drink.
So they've been abused, what, at home?
Yeah.
And then have had to leave home because of it?
Exactly. I mean, either by a relative or by someone around the family. So they've managed to kind of cut off their feelings for sex, and that's how they can go in to become sex workers.
And if these girls are underage, I mean, isn't anyone out there looking for them, like social services or, you know, some kind of safety net to catch them?
I mean, there are projects in some of the bigger cities, but I think in most towns there isn't anything to actually support these young girls. If they're missed by social services, then pretty much they're on their own. And if they haven't got caring parents who care whether they come home at night, then they're just going to be out there.
This isn't drama. This is the reality of life on the back streets of Manchester for 23-year-old Rachel.
Business, love. Sure about that?
She started sleeping with older men when she was just 14 years old. She was forced to work as a prostitute a year later.
Don't ever go away, oh, yeah, yeah. 'Cause I never meant to cause you no pain.
I always thought I was going to be a singer. You know what I mean? I remember being at that age and I was just a little character. I could just sing all day, you know what I mean? I really thought I would be famous. People say to me, now you're not meant to be on the street, you're not meant to be on drugs, you're not meant to be this, and I think, I sort of feel myself that I'm not meant to be there, do you know what I mean? Because I know I'm a nice person, too nice for the street, but that's where I've ended up. That's me. She's got the rounder face, I've got the more oblong.
Yeah. How does it feel looking back at these photographs when you think about your life back then? They're beautiful children.
I know, cute, aren't we? I know. I suppose when I look back I feel a bit sad because, I mean, I changed, but I don't know.
Rachel, here on the right with her twin sister, grew up in the Miles Platting area of Manchester. Her father left home before she was born.
If you looked at those without knowing your story, you would say, this is a child who's had a happy childhood, look at her, she's always smiling, but the truth is different, isn't it? How did you get from that to where you are now?
I don't know, I got put in care about 2 years after that, and then I just changed. Things just changed. It's alright when you're at home, innit? I was at home then. That was my mum's house. I was still living with my mum up until then. And then after then I went into care. The first time I had a crack, I was pregnant at the time. I met this guy on the street and I'd seen him loads of times. And he was with a girl who was really pissed and she was on drugs and they were taking, and I thought, why are you taking that? And I asked him and he said, because it's nice. And I went, well, what does it feel like? And he went, why don't you try it? And they actually gave it me.
And how old were you then?
15.
Rachel's crack and heroin addiction now rules her life. She sells her body to pay for it. Still a child, Becky is starting out on the same journey.
Want some? Got in it.
Get off!
What's your problem, eh?
Get the fuck off me!
This is my fucking weed. And my drink. What are you here for then? Slag.
You can have a laugh with him, you know. Share a bit of weed. Chill a bit. I've done loads of stuff. And if you get a bit pervy, you just tell him to back off. No big deal.
Rejected by those she's turned to for help, Becky becomes increasingly vulnerable to other sexual predators. She says she's being abused at home, abused on the streets, and abused by Dave Grant. But she still keeps going back.
We can see here a child who's craving of affection, perhaps craving to be cared for, to be loved. She's not receiving that at home as far as we know. And so an abuser comes into her life and he offers her something that she's not getting elsewhere. He's offering her love. She may feel that her self-esteem is building. She feels good perhaps initially with this person. And then he builds a dependency. He introduces drugs into her life. He points out that there isn't anyone else that she can rely on.
The authorities know Becky is in danger, but little changes. Desperate for somebody to listen to her, she begins making stories up and gains a reputation for being a fantasist.
It's very easy for a child to get labelled. And once they're labelled as a liar, as manipulative, as, you know, making things up to get attention, being attention-seeking, then it's a way professionals can write the case off. They can just blame the child for every aspect. Everything that's going on is the child's fault. So all the interventions are focused on the child. If only the child would behave herself, if she wouldn't go missing. And the perpetrators stay invisible, which is exactly what they want.
Desperate and unheard, Becky begins drinking more and more and using more drugs.
Now and again I do.
Rachel remembers the same thing happening to her nearly a decade ago.
Yeah. I was going weeks and weeks staying at my friend's house and things like that, and it got to a point where people were saying, "Haven't you got a home, Rachel?" And I'd tell them, "No, I'm running away from my children's home, I don't like it." But there's only so much people can do, you know. And I was actually living on the street, staying on the street. And one day I remember it raining. I said, "Haven't you got anywhere at all?" And they said, "Yeah, there's a guy." And they took me to a guy. And that's how it all started off. I started staying there. I felt like I had to have sex with him because I couldn't give him anything else. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I loved him or anything, it was just I've simply gone with him because I was staying there, really.
But it was an abusive relationship, wasn't it? Because he was, how old was he?
A lot older. 22 years older.
And you were how old?
15 at the time, yeah.
I mean, you were living on the street, you were homeless, you had no money. What else, what other options were there for you?
I don't know, love. I really don't know.
The more vulnerable girls like Rachel and Becky become, the more abusers there are who target them.
Abusers are extremely cunning, and they will know what the needs of the child are. An abuser will notice, if they're looking at a whole playground of children, they'll notice the child who's vulnerable in that way. They'll home in on that young person. So, and then once they've captured them like a spider on the web, then they will give the child messages that are very confusing, responding to their needs, sometimes positively, and at the same time it goes hand in hand with the abuse, and the young person becomes very confused and doesn't know what love is, and doesn't know what's abuse and what's love.
Becky is growing increasingly concerned about the number of abusers in her life.
Yeah. Are you going back to the arches again tonight? Nah, those bastards like the rest. Kept trying it on. I mean, I've done it loads of times, but it just got a bit too heavy. Did he rape you? Tried the fucking hardest. Called the cops. Thought you weren't going to bab her? Yeah, that was before. Started getting a bit too on top now, you know. Might have to go back to Dave and Leslie's. You can't! Well, didn't you grass him up or something? That was last week. He had a bit too much to drink. When you say you've called the cops, he calms down, and I can really handle him then. It'll be all right.
She's still only 14, but Becky hasn't been home for weeks. She's supposed to be staying at Leslie and Dave's, but they haven't been in touch either. So Becky's mum and stepdad report her missing. By now, the police are aware that Dave Grant has a record for sex offences. They go to the flat he shares with Leslie.
Mr. Grant in? Dave Grant. Mr. Grant! Dave Grant!
Despite finally realising that Dave Grant is a sex offender and that Becky has been staying at his flat, all the police do is write to him and tell him to stay away. Not long after this, Becky tells police he's raped her. But despite his record, the case is dropped through lack of evidence.
Told them he fucking raped me. Why didn't you go home? No point. They knew what he was like.
Once again, Becky's version of events is rejected.
I think because she hadn't been heard around the stepfather, and she hadn't been heard about some of her earlier allegations about other people, she began to, I detect a pattern where she begins to give up a bit and say, well, I'm not telling you anymore, or I'm not going to be interviewed, I'm certainly not going to be medically examined. Well, then that gives a picture of her as an uncooperative young person, but really she's just had enough, and she doesn't trust the system anymore to protect her.
5 months after learning that Becky has been spending time with a known sex offender, social services finally hold a child protection conference and acknowledge the threat. During that meeting, social services and a dozen or so other agencies that attended acknowledged that Becky was very vulnerable. They knew she'd been found at the home of a sex offender and that she'd alleged he'd raped her. They recognised that she was afraid of him, but continued to go to his house because she was worried he'd be violent towards her if she didn't. The sexual risk to Becky, they admitted, was extremely high.
If they're not being heard when they're overtly saying, I'm being raped, I'm being sexually abused, then what are they going to do to tell us? They're going to run away, they're going to self-harm, they're going to abuse alcohol and drugs, they're going to expose themselves to very risky situations with other possible perpetrators.
She talks about various men in, I think there was something like 25 named, she alleges 25 named people in her life that are abusing her, which is enormous, you know. And just this sense of her not being protected. She's really out there and she's letting people know what's happening to her.
Becky!
Becky's name is placed on the Child Protection Register, but little in her life changes.
Leave me alone.
She's told to go home again, despite her fears about her stepfather. She's just as vulnerable now as she was before. Increasingly desperate to be heard, she's crying out for help by cutting herself.
Mad cow. Bastard perv. I fucking hate those bastards.
Finally, nearly 6 months after it's recognised that Becky is at serious risk, the files reveal that social services find her a place in a children's home.
Hi, I'm Sarah. You okay? Here we go. Luxury, eh? This is Becky.
Hi. Welcome.
You don't tell me what to do, wankers! Bastards!
Too many E numbers. He gets a bit past it.
Come on, I'll show you to your room. Not all nut jobs, are they? Only the staff. Look, you'll be okay here, I promise. It's pizza and movie night tonight. We like to treat ourselves every now and then. I like Hawaiian. Hawaiian it is then?
Rachel remembers her first children's home.
That's my house twin sister. I was more influenced off other girls already in the kids' home. I think kids' homes are a lot worse than foster homes because kids in kids' homes seem to be a lot worse. Do you know what I mean? That's why they're there, because no foster home wants them. Do you know what I mean? And that tends to be the problem. And then they're that bad, especially lads. And if you get involved in that sort of group, you end up in bad company. I don't think you're ever happy where you placed in care, you know. You just want to be with your own mum.
Do you remember the first time you did this? Stood on the street?
Yeah, I was about 15.
And you've been doing it ever since?
Yeah, every day.
Why don't you stop? Why can't you stop?
Because I'm on drugs. I need money for drugs. I have an habit.
You're freezing. How long will you stand out here tonight?
It depends, as long as it takes. Got to wait for somebody to stop. Sometimes I'm out 10, 15 minutes, other times I'm out hours. Lately it's been really quiet.
What time will you work till tonight?
Early hours in the morning.
2, 3?
3, 4, yeah, normally. And then I just wait until the dealer turns on at 9, because after 3 you can't score then.
So you work here until you can get your last score?
Yeah.
And then where will you sleep? You don't know?
Anywhere.
Almost as soon as Becky arrives at her children's home, she causes trouble.
I've told you, she's robbed me lippy.
Becky, come on.
Becky finds she can come and go as she pleases.
Becky!
Her files detail how, exasperated by her behaviour, staff can do little to control her. She absconds from the children's home more and more, going missing for days and nights at a time. Staff aren't allowed to physically stop her leaving, even though they have strong suspicions that when she runs away, she's being abused and prostituted.
All right?
Yeah? Is Becky in yet?
Nope.
Another all-nighter?
Going for the record.
Couldn't you have stopped her?
One finger from me and it's get off your rapist, I'll have the police on you.
We're responsible for her. Isn't that why we're called a care home?
Look, there's kids you can help and those you can't. Try your best, you know. If she wants to put herself at risk, there's not a lot we can do to stop her.
It's not right.
Didn't say it was. Look, you've got to look after yourself too in all this. You get too close, they'll tear you apart.
But you've seen her notes. You've read all the allegations.
Yeah, and about half of them are just that. She's wasted the police's time. She's wasting everybody's time. She's going to waste yours.
Right, Dad.
Where have you been?
Around, doing stuff. Went to Leslie's.
Have you been drinking?
You're not supposed to go there. Isn't that where Dave Grant lives?
Fuck off, you. I'm going to bed.
There's less to go in the book.
Whatever.
Put it down with all the others.
Social services say that in circumstances like this, there's nothing they can do.
We are bound by regulation, which is an appropriate set of regulation by and large, to not curtail young people's liberty. They have rights, human rights. The issue isn't one of the care home. It's an issue of the men who are prepared to have sex with children and pay money to have sex with children.
So where's it going wrong then? Is it that the police aren't doing enough? Because these people are breaking the law, let's not forget that.
Yes, but then if a young person doesn't provide evidence because they don't believe that they are being exploited, or say a 13 or 14-year-old girl goes missing for a weekend, and her pimp arranges for her to have sex with 30 or 40 men over that period, and then she comes back again, where's the evidence if she's not prepared to speak about what's happened to her, who she's been with?
We're outcast, and I felt like she really cared.
When Rachel was 15, she had a baby by a man who'd groomed her for sex. He was 22 years older than she was.
She really, really cared. I loved him to bits, and I just had to cut him off, but because I've dealt with so much in life, it was a lot easier than what I thought. But it was an heavy blow, must admit. But you've got to do it, haven't you, when you're with somebody like that, because so obviously was just using me. I was too naive at the time. Do you know what I mean? I was one of them, why, what, and he'd be like, just fill me head with shit.
But now that you're older, you can look back and see that that was a totally inappropriate relationship.
Yeah.
You realise you were used and that he was probably a
it does me head in
paedophile.
when I think back. Of course, I don't, that, because I've got a kid to him, I say to himself, it's not really a paedophile, Rachel, but he is. Because
you were 15.
I was underage.
Even Becky is beginning to realise that the older men in her life aren't what they seem. She tells people how they're becoming more manipulative and threatening.
Want to see my health worker? Why? Because I want a kid.
Becky, we're not having this conversation here.
I want a kid. And my boyfriend wants one. No point doing all this shagging for nothing.
You're being stupid.
I want a kid. Otherwise, I'll get my family.
What do you mean, Becky?
I mean, he threatens my family. If I don't meet him and give him what he wants, he threatens my family.
Following this incident, one of the care workers at the home wrote in Becky's case file about Becky's concerns for her own safety and the safety of her family. If her carers weren't already worried about her, according to experts we've consulted, they certainly should have been worried by now.
In terms of taking action, at every step of the way, a Section 47 should have been triggered, and that is a very urgent response from the authorities. It means the social services and the police meeting on that day. At that meeting, you make plans to how you're going to conduct an investigation, and that would lead to considering it. Do we need to take any immediate action to protect this child while we investigate?
While Becky's file reveals that social services recognise she's in significant danger, her situation appears to remain unchanged.
We're having this DVD or what?
Yeah, put it on. It's just like a kid's party. Stick your fucking pizza. I'm off.
Becky, you going nowhere? Come on.
Out of the fucking way.
No. Becky, you listen to me. This has to stop now.
I'm fucking loving you.
Leave it, Sarah.
She shouldn't be going with that man.
Do your best. Just stick in the book with all the other reports.
Yeah.
Even the police are pissed off. We say she's missing, they waste time looking. It's the same thing every time. Even if they do find her, she won't get in the bloody car. I'm telling you, secure unit's the only way with people like her.
There's got to be more we can do.
Look at her, she's out of here on her own free will.
She can't assess the risk.
Oh, rubbish.
What if the girl says Becky sleeps with men for money?
She's a fantasist. She's the one with the problem. We're going to write this up, or am I?
Thought you said it was a waste.
It's procedure, though.
By now, the police are growing tired of looking for Becky every time she goes missing. It's a problem across the country. Police forces wasting what they see as valuable man-hours tracking down regular runaways and taking them home.
Hey! You pinched the shoes!
We know that the police do not see child protection as a police priority. It is lower down the line than burglary.
What, child protection is
Yes,
lower down
it
the
is.
list of priorities than burglary?
And child protection is not a police national performance target. That means they don't have to produce figures about how many successful the cases they have in protecting children.
In Becky's case, though, police do ask social services for her to be placed in secure accommodation for her own safety. But their request goes unheard.
There was some sort of spurious criteria about why she wasn't appropriate for secure provision. If I was the worker for this child in that meeting and I felt secure provision was appropriate, I would have pushed that forward strongly. The criteria for secure provision is about absconding. If she's likely to abscond and if she's likely to cause herself harm or others harm, Becky is absconding 36 times she ran away. And she is at very likely risk. She's absolute risk of harm, of significant harm. So the criteria is there clearly.
There's good reason for the police to push for Becky to be placed in a secure unit. Her file reveals that there's another older man on the scene, Mike. He's in his 40s and they suspect he's a paedophile. Becky's absconding for days at a time. Care staff are powerless to act.
Morning, Becky. Will you give me a minute, please? Promise not to go on and on.
Didn't think you were on early.
I'm not. This is me enjoying myself. Why do you do it?
Do what?
Everything. What about your self-esteem?
You don't know one thing about my life.
Tell me then.
They treat me nice. Most of them.
Dave Grant didn't.
Not him. Mike don't do that. Mike saved me from Grant. He's like my shining knight, you know. Only he's got a car instead of a horse.
How old is Mike?
Doesn't matter.
But it does. It's abuse. He is manipulating you.
He gives me stuff. We go round days, we have Bacardi, fags, and he never lets me go away without putting something in my pocket. When I'm there, I don't feel ugly.
He's giving you attention. That's all it is. Making you feel special.
It's more than anyone else does.
That doesn't make it right. Does he ask for anything in return?
What do you mean?
You know what I mean.
No.
Come on, Becky.
We have a good time. What else is there to do? Being stuck around this shithole, going home. I do what I want.
But you're 14. Becky!
If the child is leaving the care home and everyone knows in the care home that she's going off to be sexually abused by a man, I mean, who is going to protect her? If not the care home, which is in loco parentis, who is going to protect that child? Nobody?
The regulations don't... The only protection that you're likely to succeed with in that very short, immediate window when a child's about to go is ultimately to lock a door on them, and that's illegal. The law takes the balance of civil liberties and human rights and says there has to be a really strong case of harm either to that young person or to somebody else.
But it's hard to think of a much stronger case for harm when you've got a 14-year-old girl who's going to be sexually abused by several men.
Yeah.
How much worse does it have to get before staff will feel that they must keep her indoors?
Well, the law prevents an ordinary community children's home from locking the doors and preventing children leaving. It's absolutely black and white. So if you wanted to physically prevent a young person from being sexually exploited in the conditions you're describing, then you have to apply for a secure accommodation order.
Secure accommodation, though, is very expensive. There's a shortage of places, and it involves locking a child up for 24 hours a day alongside other severely damaged children. But our experts believe that an investigation known as an organised abuse inquiry could have helped Becky.
The indicators of organised abuse are very clear. It just has to be more than one child and more than one abuser. With this child, there were 25 named alleged sexual abusers. That's enough to have organised abuse procedures.
They can't physically stop a young person going out of the building, but they are the eyes and ears for the young person and for the investigation. So if an organised abuse strategy was in place, the residential workers would be part of that strategy. They'd be very clear which officer to ring at that very second when a car pulls up with that actual number, so action can be taken to intercept the journey of that child in that vehicle within moments. But if the system isn't in place and they ring the local police officer or they just report the child missing, all these things, those systems don't trigger urgent action to protect the child.
There may be cases where an organised abuse procedure will work, and I'm aware of a couple of schemes around cities which are a magnet for prostitution. What police and social care workers are doing regularly is pooling their evidence and designing an investigation to fit the needs of the situation. So you don't actually need a formalised abuse procedure to deal with an issue like that. You need a systematic way of working together and gathering evidence.
Just seeing a brew, do you want one? Why won't you toast me, Becky?
Sarah, he makes me do things. Says that I owe him.
Owe him for what?
The stuff he gives me. The drink and the cigs. Says I've got to be nice to him. And there's always loads of them there.
You don't have to go.
I do. If I don't, he says he'll hurt me. And our Anna. I mean, how does he know my little sister?
We'll call the police.
Now you're being fucking stupid.
No, don't!
Oh, shit. He's outside.
Who is Mike? Becky!
I've told you, I've got him.
Take some bottle.
He doesn't give a damn. I think she's untouchable.
Yeah, well, it's not far wrong.
We've just allowed someone that we're pretty sure is a paedophile take someone in our care back to a place where she'll be abused and can't lift a finger to do anything about it.
Look, I told you, you get too close. What are you going to do when the next Becky comes along? Because they will. If not next week, the week after that, or the week after that. You can only have time and energy for so many. The rest, you got to let go. I like this one. About that brew, eh?
she was expected to pull herself away from the most, what seems like, were the most terrifying number of serious sexual predators in a network of abusers. From the way she spoke of the threats they put her under, threatening to kill her, her family, to stab her, punching her in the stomach, all these things. That's pretty scary for a 14, 15-year-old child.
One of the most shocking allegations Becky made involved the girlfriend of the suspected paedophile we've called Mike.
She's ready. Aren't you, love?
Becky claimed she'd been dolled up and then made to have sex with Mike and his friends.
He's like my shining knight, you know. Only he's got a car instead of a horse.
My overall impression for Becky is that there's been a series of opportunities along the way for professionals whose job it is to protect children. These opportunities have been lost. She's tried to help by telling the story, and each time she tells the story she's shut up. She's not heard, she's not listened to.
This child's voice has not been heard, and if you're looking at all the inquiries since 1945, we've had child abuse inquiries. Hundreds of children have died from abuse, and there's been subsequent inquiries. We have all the knowledge we need to know how to protect children, and the one clear message coming through again and again in all those years is listen to the voice of the child.
The worst case scenario for Becky is that she will be missed. She will be lost in this sea, this murky sea really of abuse, of abusive networks. The very, very worst case scenario is that she dies, she disappears or dies. These things happen.
Bernardo's believe that thousands of children across the UK are failed by the care system every year.
And that is because there's no proper protocols, which means there's no proper guidance in that area about how the people who are looking after the children should be trained, how they work together, how they speak and, talk to young people about what's happening to them. And therefore, of course, that means that those young people will be failed.
Becky is now 15 years old. She's now in foster care, but her future is still uncertain. And there are thousands of other Beckys out there tonight. We can only hope that their lives don't end up like Rachel's.
I really, truly, deeply inside don't believe I'll always do this. I think it'll be better. I think I'll do something else. Something will come up. Because I'm always quite lucky like that, really. I'm still young and I still believe I've got a lot of life yet to change. I'm only 23 years old. Never meant to cause you no pain, baby, yeah. I just want to go back to being the same. Well, I only want to make things right, baby, before you walk in my life. Oh, yeah. I never meant to cause you no pain. Baby, believe me, I just want to go back to being the same. Well, I only want to make things right before you walk out of my life. Before you walk in my life.
I'm Peter Taylor, and I've been tracking Al-Qaeda since the War on Terror began. Iraq is the new training ground. Foreign fighters travel there to join the insurgency, including recruits from Britain. With no end in sight and fears of another attack at home, I ask, is it time to talk to Al-Qaeda?
There is no harm in talking. Engagement is not endorsement.
Peter Taylor's acclaimed series returns. Al-Qaeda, Time to Talk, Sunday at 9 on BBC Two.
Every night this week on BBC Radio 3 and BBC 4, the BBC Proms. Be moved this summer.
Traumatic cases reopened and victims out for revenge now on BBC One. Strong language in Blackjack.